Tantor Audio presents One Night with Him by K.S. Smith. Narrated by Leah Mallach. Chapter 1. The toxic smell of Patron hit my nose, and I instantly knew this was going to be a night I wouldn't remember. Shot! 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 The sound of 15 women rang in my ears as I grabbed the penis-shaped shot glass off of the table and pressed it to my lips. Tilting my head back, I cringed when the tequila slammed into the back of my throat. It reminded me of liquid lava. I could feel the burn all the way into the pit of my stomach. "You are so lucky you're my best friend, because you're the only person I would do a shot of tequila for," I yelled across the VIP section of the club to my best friend. Addison was spinning herself around the stripper pole, a hot pink boa laced around her shoulders, grinning from ear to ear. It was the weekend before her wedding, and we were all out celebrating her bachelorette party. "I knew you'd cave. You can't say no to your best friend, can you?" The words rolled off her tongue in a slur since she was already 6 shots ahead of me. "You're the only person I can't say no to, and you know that." I smiled as I raised another shot to my mouth. I knew as maid of honor I had some catching up to do. I couldn't let my best friend drink herself into oblivion all by herself, especially not on her last weekend as a single woman. The perks of being Addison Cartwright's best friend usually meant that you had whatever you wanted at your fingertips. In tonight's case, it was the entire VIP section of the hottest nightclub in town, the Limelight, owned and operated by none other than Mr. Theodore Cartwright, Addison's father. Addison came from money, and her family only obtained more of it once her father took an interest in the nightclub scene. It had benefited us tremendously in college, and tonight was no different. Our entire section was raised 2 floors above the rest of the club, and everyone was envious. Bouncers lined all the entrances, and only those escorted by Addison herself were allowed in and out, with the exception of me, of course. I was like a second daughter to the Cartwrights, so I had just as much clout as Addison did when it came to the nightclub. "I think we need more Patron," I shouted across the table to the girls. "And some guys. We really need some entertainment up here. I'm not doing all of these shots to entertain myself." I stood up and scanned the VIP section for one of our servers, but they were nowhere to be seen, so I took it upon myself to make my way down to the second floor of the club to order a few more bottles of Patron, and to see if I could find any guys who looked worthwhile. "Excuse me, Hank." I tapped the huge bouncer on the shoulder. "I'm going down to the second floor to get more Patron. I'll be back in a few minutes."
"Do you need a bouncer to go with you?"
"No." I touched his arm to thank him. "I'll be fine. Addison is the one who draws in all of the attention. I can usually go unnoticed." Hank smirked and nodded his head as I walked past him and down the stairs. The bar was packed. Music blaring. People were pressed together as tight as sardines. I could hardly get through the crowd and up to the bar. I should have listened to Hank and grabbed a bouncer just so they could have cleared a path. After what seemed like hours of pressing through people's sweaty bodies, I was finally belly up to the bar. I waved to Chris, the bartender, and he was in front of me within seconds.
"What can I get you, beautiful?"
4 bottles of Patron Gran Bardillos, please." Chris went into the back room and came out with 4 bottles.
"You want me to send them up to the VIP area so you don't have to carry them?"
"That would be amazing. Can you grab me a water while you're at it?" Chris gave me a wink and was back in seconds with a bottle of water.
"You're the best!"
I smiled and left a generous tip on the bar for our favorite bartender. I knew if I intended on drinking more tequila, I needed some water to keep me from wanting to die the next morning, so I leaned against the bar and pounded back my water.
"I'm impressed,"
a deep, husky voice whispered into my ear. I glanced to my left, and leaning against the bar next to me was what had to have been a model plucked straight out of a GQ magazine. Pardon me? I asked, looking him up and down.
Impressive. I've been standing at this bar for over 20 minutes, and I haven't even been acknowledged by the bartender. Then out of nowhere, you run up here with your tight little ass and smile that would bring a grown man to his knees, and instantly you have 4 bottles of Patron and water within seconds.
I smiled, batting my eyelashes. I guess those are the perks of having a tight ass. Did I really just say that? It wasn't like me to be so quick on my feet, but I was proud of myself. As I whipped around to walk away, GQ grabbed my arm and pulled me back towards him, so I was pressed right up against his chest. Damn, he smelled good. I'm not sure what cologne he was wearing, but it had my senses running on overdrive. Is there something I can help you with? I glared up at this beautiful stranger who was much too close to my face.
A drink, for starters. I figured I'd have better luck with the bartender if you were calling his name.
I turned around in his arms and waved for Chris one more time as GQ nuzzled my neck and whispered into my ear,
"And your number would be nice, too."
Chris was in front of me before I even put my hand down. I pressed my ass against GQ's crotch as I leaned over the bar and yelled, "Would you get this guy a drink? He's been waiting a while."
"Sure, what can I get you, man?" "A Yingling, please."
Chris grabbed a Yingling and was back in front of us in just enough time for me to scribble my telephone number on a napkin. "Thanks, Chris. Be sure to put those 4 Patrons on his tab for the hassle." I grabbed the Yingling, set it on top of the napkin that had my telephone number scribbled on it, handed it to GQ as he stood there with a shocked look on his face, then turned around and walked away as fast as my feet would move. There was a reason I didn't drink tequila anymore, and that was it right there. It made me crazy. Example number 1, I just put 4 bottles of $500 tequila on a total stranger's tab. I hoped he had a great job because there was no way Chris was going to let him leave without paying for that liquor. I smirked, proud of my quick wit, as I looked over my shoulder just in time to see GQ take a drag off of his beer, his eyes raking over my entire body. My stomach flipped. Who in the hell was this man? And why was my entire body tingling at the thought of him watching me? It's too. Chris was in front of me before I even put my hand down. I pressed my ass against GQ's crotch as I leaned over the bar and yelled, "Would you get this guy a drink? He's been waiting a while."
"Sure, what can I get you, man?" "A Yingling, please."
Chris grabbed a Yingling and was back in front of us in just enough time for me to scribble my telephone number on a napkin. "Thanks, Chris. Be sure to put those 4 Patrons on his tab for the hassle." I grabbed the Yingling, set it on top of the napkin that had my telephone number scribbled on it, handed it to GQ as he stood there with a shocked look on his face, then turned around and walked away as fast as my feet would move. There was a reason I didn't drink tequila anymore, and that was it right there. It made me crazy. Example number 1, I just put 4 bottles of $500 tequila on a total stranger's tab. I hoped he had a great job because there was no way Chris was going to let him leave without paying for that liquor. I smirked, proud of my quick wit, as I looked over my shoulder just in time to see GQ take a drag off of his beer, his eyes raking over my entire body. My stomach flipped. Who in the hell was this man? And why was my entire body tingling at the thought of him watching me? Chapter 2.
Where in the hell have you been? You're my maid of honor. You can't just go disappearing like that.
Addison was standing on top of the table, taking a drink straight out of one of the bottles.
"I'm sorry,"
I screamed over the blaring music.
"I got sidetracked downstairs. I promise, no more disappearing."
Unless GQ finds me, then it's a whole different story.
For the rest of the night, it's me, you, that bottle of tequila, and all of our girls.
Addison grabbed my hand and pulled me onto the table with her. lifted her bottle as high above her head as she could get it without toppling over, and screamed,
"You're damn right it is!"
All of the girls with us began cheering, and the cheering led to dancing, the type of dancing you do when no one is looking. Oh yeah, between the shots and our screaming sorority sisters, there was no possible way I was going to make it to tomorrow without putting myself into a tequila-induced coma. After several hours of dancing on tabletops and flirting with the few guys Addison allowed into the VIP section, it was time to call it a night. Addison, along with several of our other girlfriends, were on the verge of being passed out drunk on the couches that wrapped around the room. All the while, I was making sure everyone who was capable of still standing on their own 2 feet were getting their things together in order to make it back to the party bus. "Hank, would you have some of the guys help Addison and the other girls to the bus? I think it's time we get back to the hotel." Hank nodded and began to get a few guys together. After several attempts of corralling 15 drunk women down 2 flights of stairs and through a sea of people, we finally made it back to the hotel in one piece. I'd booked us a penthouse suite at one of Tampa's most luxurious resorts, the Bellevue, so we all had plenty of space to spread out. But I'm not going to lie, when everyone got to the room, they'd passed out everywhere but the bedrooms, and it pretty much resembled the morning after scene of The Hangover. Bodies were scattered throughout the entire suite. I'd finally gotten Addison changed and into bed. Just as my head hit the pillow, my phone started beeping. "You've got to be kidding me," I thought as I stumbled around the dark room, searching for my cell phone. Not recognizing the number, I reached for the power button to turn it off and ignore the incoming text, but something in my gut told me to open it and see who in the world was crazy enough to bother me at this hour of the night. "What are the odds your party bus is parked outside of my hotel? Who is this?" I'll give you one guess. My bar tab was over $2,000 this evening, and I only had 5 beers. I stopped dead in my tracks and clasped my hand over my mouth. Was GQ seriously texting me? With all the drinking we had done, I'd almost forgotten all about him. I blushed, remembering how good he smelled, and how nice my body felt when he'd wrapped his solid arms around me. GQ? Who? LOL, GQ. I never caught your name, and you resembled a GQ model, so it stuck. Ha. Well then, yes, GQ. Why don't you come downstairs and meet me for a drink? I'm headed to the bar. A drink? Was he serious? I was still drunk off my ass. There was no way I could drink anymore, not without potentially killing myself in the process. But there was just something about him that made me throw on my flip-flops and saunter to the elevator. As I walked through the lobby, I quickly realized that I'd already changed into my pajamas, and I was sporting yoga pants and a tank top. Probably not the best outfit, considering he'd last seen me in a dress so short my ass almost popped out. But what the hell? I was still half drunk, beyond exhausted. It was almost 4 a.m, and I was pretty positive most of the hotel guests were already in bed. "Hey there," he whispered, sneaking up behind me. I turned and was looking straight up into his eyes. Damn, he was gorgeous. I mean, I'd realized it in the club, but now that we were out of the dark atmosphere, I could actually see him. All of him. He towered over me. I was guessing he had to be pushing 6'5". His skin was perfectly tanned. He either lived at the beach or he was a frequent customer at the tanning salon. The 5 o'clock shadow that lingered on his jaw had come in just enough to make me wonder what it would feel like pressed against my neck. "Hi," I said shyly, trying to avoid eye contact.
"How was that Patron?"
he inquired, running his hand through his dark brown hair, giving me just enough time to catch a glimpse of his muscular stomach, as well as a trail of hair leading down south into his boxers. My cheeks instantly flushed red as tiny beads of sweat began to blossom on the back of my neck. Well, tonight it was a hit, but I'm sure tomorrow we'll all be cursing your name. He chuckled and looked at the time on his phone.
It looks like the bar is closed up for the night, but if you'd like, we can go back to my room. They have the bar fully stocked.
I knew this had the potential to get out of hand, but I figured it was the least I could do, considering I'd forced him to pay for all of our very expensive liquor. Sure. I smiled and turned towards the elevators. He placed a hand on the small of my back, and a shot ran straight up my spine, my body instantly covered in goosebumps. What was it about this man? It's like his mere touch rocked me to the core. When he finally opened the door to his suite, I was a nervous wreck. The tequila must have been wearing off. Can I please have a shot of anything?
More shots. How are you not passed out by now?
I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. Can you just get me one, please? He walked behind the bar and poured me a shot of whiskey. Oh man, this was not going to sit well, but I didn't care. I picked it up and slammed it back. My throat was already so numb, I couldn't even feel the burn that I'm sure was lingering behind. I set the glass down and asked for one more.
I don't think that is a good idea.
Well, it's a good thing you aren't my boss. One more. Now. I took the second shot, and I knew I'd be so much more comfortable in about 30 seconds. I was positive all it would take was some added liquor courage to regain my earlier buzz.
Here, drink this.
He handed me a glass of water. Knowing full well that would kill my buzz, I just left it there.
Okay, suit yourself, but don't be surprised if you are puking your guts out later tonight.
Oh, I'm sure I can hold my own, I said, leaning across the bar closer to his face. And there it was. My buzz was rearing its ugly head, and I was getting bold all over again. It only took 4 steps, and he'd moved from behind the bar, and both of his strong arms had been placed on either side of my hips. His face wasn't even an inch away from mine, as I felt his breath wash over my lips.
I bet you can,
he said in a throaty voice, before his mouth slammed into mine. I was completely caught off guard, and by the time I'd realized what was going on, his strong hands were already gripping my ass and lifting me up around his waist. I grabbed fistfuls of his hair and devoured his mouth at the same rate he was taking mine. His tongue slipped past my lips, and I let out a moan, arching my body closer to him. Before I knew it, I was pressed up against the wall, and he was pulling my shirt over my head, his tongue tracing its way down my neck and over my collarbone. I couldn't control the movement of my hands. It was as if they were metal and his body was the magnet. I wanted nothing more than to touch every inch of him, so I did. He continued teasing my body as he carried me through the living room. My sports bra was tugged off of me as he sucked one of my breasts into his mouth. I gasped for air, trying to hold on tighter with my legs, since my head was flung back to open myself up further to his mouth, leaving me further off balance. His eyes gazed over my bare chest and up to meet mine, looking pleased with the moans that were escaping my throat. By the time we'd made it to the bedroom, he had every ounce of our clothing removed. They left a trail from the bar to the bed. Tossing me onto the bed, he leaned in and took my mouth, biting my bottom lip as I ran my nails down his shoulder blades, pulling him further between my legs. The sound of foil ripped, and before I could offer my assistance, he'd taken my body just as quickly as I'd given myself to him. From what I remembered, it was the most amazing orgasm I'd ever experienced. But what came next made me not want to even think about sex. Chapter 3. I opened my eyes and the room was spinning. I was going to kill Addison for encouraging me to drink all of that tequila. I got out of bed and ran straight to the bathroom. I hated throwing up, but at that point I was willing to do whatever it took to rid myself of the liquor that was still lingering in my system. The bathroom seemed much bigger than I remembered, but at that very moment I couldn't care less about the size. All I was worried about was how quickly I could make it to the toilet. Just in the nick of time, I dropped to my knees and began praying to the porcelain gods. After 20 minutes of pure torture, I'd showered, brushed my teeth, and walked out of the bathroom ready to get back into bed and go to sleep. I pulled the covers back so I could lie down, and that's when I saw his naked body lying there, sprawled out in all of his gorgeous glory. My hands flew to my mouth, and I whispered to myself, "Oh, shit! You've got to be kidding me!" My eyes darted along the floor, looking for anything that resembled an article of my own clothing. I didn't see anything, so I ran into the living room and quickly grabbed the clothes I'd been wearing last night, which were scattered around the room, threw them on, and ran straight for the door. I couldn't believe I'd had a one-night stand with GQ. Pacing in front of the elevator bank, I couldn't help but replay last night's events in my head. How had I allowed myself to end up in a stranger's bed? What was I thinking? Clearly I wasn't. That was the problem. I'd let the liquor get the best of me, and now I'd have to deal with the consequences. I leaned against the elevator wall, breathing heavily, rambling a mile a minute to myself like an idiot all the way to our floor. Oh my gosh, I don't even know his name. It's official. I'm a slut. How could I be so stupid? To think I gave in so easily. I didn't even make him work for it. Sure, it was great. It was fan-freaking-tastic. But that doesn't change the fact that I just had my first official one-night stand, and I don't even know the guy's name. I'm sure Mom and Dad are so proud. Damn you, Reagan, get it together. Everyone does it. At least you waited until you were 27 and didn't cave at 19 like Addison had. The bell chimed on our floor, and the doors of the elevator opened, while I was still pacing the tiny space and talking to myself. An older gentleman's throat cleared, and I was brought back to reality. Wonderful. Now the guests here think they're sharing a hotel with a lunatic. "Oh, excuse me," I shouted as I ran past him and straight to our penthouse suite. Much to my surprise, all of the girls were up, bearing bikinis, ready for her day at the beach.
"Where in the hell did you run off to last night?" Addison screamed across the suite. "I've been calling you all morning."
She was standing there with her hands on her hips, looking like a pissed-off mother who just found her teenager sneaking back into the house from the night before. "Please stop screaming," I begged. "My head is pounding, and I just woke up in bed with a man. Oh, and did I mention I don't even know his name? Just give me a minute to process, and I'll get back to you."
"You what?"
She was immediately at my side, dragging me into our bedroom. If there was one thing Addison was more interested in than herself, it was my sex life, or more like my lack thereof. She flung me onto the couch and plopped down right next to me. "You have got to tell me everything right now." Look, I'm not even sure I remember anything. I was pretty toasted last night. No thanks to you and your damn tequila shots. All I know is he's here in this hotel, and we have to leave before he finds out what room we're in. I cannot run into him ever. I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes, hoping it would keep her from asking any more questions. No such luck. "Are you kidding me? Was it that terrible?" I laughed. Not exactly. From what I do remember, it was probably the best sex I'd ever had in my entire existence. I blushed when I said it. Granted, it was only Addison, but I was still embarrassed. "Then what the hell are you hiding for? You should still be in that room with him, getting ready for round 2. "No way!" I screamed. Look, guys like him probably have a different girl every night. I'm sure I did him a favor by leaving without waking him. Now come on, let's go. I got up and moved as quickly as my aching body would let me, grabbing my things and throwing them into my bag. Addison grabbed all of her luggage, tossed on her cover-up, and we went downstairs to check out. I'd put on my sunglasses and floppy hat to try and disguise myself, just in case GQ made his way to the lobby for whatever reason. I was casing the lobby of the hotel like a detective, and I think Addison was purposefully taking longer than needed in hopes of spotting him. Once we were in my SUV and pulling out of the hotel parking lot, I felt like I could actually breathe again. Addison was raking me over the coals about the details, but I really didn't have much to offer her. There wasn't much I remembered. Look, you know I'm not like that. I just don't go hooking up with random guys wanting to have one-night stands. I'm not sure what got into me last night, but it's over with, and I just have to forget about it. I tried to focus on the road, but my head was still pounding. Do you have any aspirin? Addison dug through her giant purse and finally found a bottle of white pills and handed me two. Luckily, there was bottled water in the cup holder. I was going to need more than this to get through the day. Does he have your phone number? She asked quietly. He won't call, trust me. He got what he wanted last night. Now, enough about me. This is your last Sunday as a single woman. Let's focus on you. And that is exactly how we spent the rest of the day, baking in the scorching sun, drinking Bloody Marys. Chapter 4. The next week was nothing but final wedding preparations. Granted, Addison had hired Tampa's best wedding planner, but there were still things she wanted taken care of herself, and as maid of honor, it was my job to see all of it had been checked off of her list. From wedding ring pickups to trips to and from the airport for family and friends, I seemed to be in charge of everything. I was thankful. Staying busy was keeping my mind off of the fact that GQ totally met my expectations and had yet to contact me after our wild evening together. I know I had no reason to be, but I was furious. While I was sitting at the airport stewing over GQ and waiting on yet another flight, I called Addison. She answered the call. Please tell me you're at the airport. Casey's aunt and uncle just landed, and they will die if they have to wait for someone to pick them up. Oh, come on, you know I'm never late. You've made me your bitch, and I intend on fulfilling that position, but I just want to know why Casey's best man doesn't have to do any of this. Shouldn't we be splitting all of the last-minute to-dos? Yeah, right. You know how the guys are. They want as little to do with this stuff as possible. Casey told them that the only thing they are responsible for is showing up sober the day of the wedding. Great. I'll be sure to thank Case when I see him. I've got to go. I think I've spotted the aunt and uncle. Damn, for an old man, he is a total knockout. Good genes. Be nice to them. They're the best man's parents. Even more reason he should be helping me, I exclaimed. Gotta run. Have fun. I'll see you soon. She ended the call. I jumped out of the car to greet Casey's uncle and aunt. Mr. and Mrs. Conrad?
Yes, that's us, the older man said in a deep voice.
Hi, I'm Reagan, Addison's best friend. It's so nice to meet the both of you. We all shook hands, and then I helped Mr. Conrad get their bags in the back of my SUV. Once their bags were packed into the back of the car, I jumped back into the driver's seat and headed towards Addison's parents' house.
Aren't we going to the Bellevue? Mr. Conrad asked.
Yes, but first everyone is going to the Cartwrights for dinner. Then I believe we'll all carpool back to the hotel. Oh, good. I hope Colton will be there, said a tiny voice from the back seat. I looked into my rearview mirror. Mrs. Conrad looked like she was anticipating a long-awaited homecoming. Colton? I asked, looking to Mr. Conrad.
Yes, our son. He lives here in Tampa. Hardly makes it home to see his parents. He's a very busy man. It will be good to see him. But I don't want you to go getting your hopes up, Candace. You know he'll probably only be available the day of the wedding, he said, looking into the back seat at his wife. Well, I hope he is there, and you get to see him more than just at the wedding. I wish I could visit my parents. Damn. The words flew out before I could catch them and reel them back in. Do they not live in town? Mr. Conrad asked.
Well, they did. They passed a few years ago in an accident.
Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thanks. It was extremely hard at first, but it gets easier as time goes by. Anyway, I can't...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?